Get ready for Benjamin Knight Fuchs live on a Sunday afternoon. Benjamin, how are you?
Happy Sunday, my friend Liam.
Happy
How you doing,
Sunday,
buddy?
Ben. I'm doing great. Lovely day here in Chicago. How's it where you are?
Chicagoland.
Yeah.
Are you excited about the Bears?
Always.
This year you should be really excited.
Yeah, let's hope.
For a change, huh?
For a change.
The Bears.
The Bears.
So I was, I'm always scouting out for interesting articles during the week that we can talk about, and one jumped out at me this week,
Okay.
and that is the relationship between cancer and the digestive system. This is an article that I got from Forbes, but there's been a bunch of news lately. There was an article that I saw in the British Medical Journal that we don't have here, headlined Association of Ultra-Processed Food Consumption with Colorectal Cancer Risk. This one is on the global surge. Well, junk food, I imagine, is basically the same thing. I also read an article on the relationship between caffeine drinks, energy drinks, and colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is one of the fastest rising, has the fastest rising rates of any cancer. I'm pretty sure it's now second or third cancer. It's second or third in terms of cancer incidences. And clearly, if you have colorectal cancer, you've got something going on in your digestive system. And so it should make perfect sense that if you're eating the wrong kinds of food, processed food, ultra-processed food, that your risks of any cancer really, but colorectal cancer particularly, especially when it comes to high-fat foods. And this really is a very important point. You probably remember the war on cancer in 1971 that President Nixon declared. We're gonna fight cancer. And I heard Joe Biden say, we're going to eliminate cancer. And this is kind of a political thing that folks who are running for office like to say, we're going to beat cancer and we're going to have a war on cancer and we're going to fight cancer. And there's this idea that we're innocent victims in the appearance of carcinogenesis, that we're just bystanders and cancer is attacking us on some level. And I think it's really important to recognize that cancer is a lifestyle issue. There's a small percentage of cancers that are related to some genetic predisposition. But even then, whether the genes express themselves or not is largely a factor of the environment. So we know, you can go to the next slide, Liam, we know that much of cancer is lifestyle based. In fact, according to this article, 90 to 95% of cancers are lifestyle based. And I would say it's even more than that, probably approaching 100% of cancers are lifestyle based. And we want to get the idea of cancer attacking us or us being innocent bystanders in the development of cancer out of our heads and recognize that cancer is the end result of duress. And cancer is really cancer cells. When we talk about prostate cancer and breast cancer and bone cancer and skin cancer, et cetera, we're really talking about a cellular phenomena. In this way, there's really no such thing as prostate cancer. There's no such thing as breast cancer. There's no such thing as skin cancer. There's skin cell cancer and prostate cell cancer and bone cell cancer and breast cell cancer and cervical cell cancer, et cetera. It's the cell that becomes carcinogenic. It's the cell that grows out of control, and it's the cell that is under duress when it becomes cancerous. A cancer cell is a cell that has many of the characteristics of a bacterial cell. Quick digression. There are two classes of cells. You have primitive cells and you have advanced cells. Advanced cells are advanced. They have lots of working parts in them. They have a clear, distinct nucleus. They're very efficient with energy, and they have an ability to give it up for the team. So a bone cell is a cell that has now given up its independence and dedicates its life to becoming bone. A liver cell has given up its independence and has dedicated its life to becoming a liver. And a skin cell has given up its independence and dedicated its life to become skin. If you take a skin cell out of the skin or liver cell out of the liver or bone cell out of the bone and put it in a petri dish, it's not going to become a bone. It's just going to act like a cell. So a advanced cell, technically called a eukaryote, that's EU for good. A karyote means cell. A eukaryote is a cell that's advanced. Animal cells and plant cells are eukaryotes. They give it up for the team. They dedicate their lives for the organism. A bacterial cell is a prokaryote, a primitive cell. Pro means primitive, or a beginning. So cells began on planet Earth 3.5 billion years ago as prokaryotes, as bacteria that just reproduced. They're very disorganized. They weren't very efficient with their energy. They had to divide very rapidly. They didn't form organs. They just formed films. They're backwards primitive cells. A cancer cell is a cell that has gone from a eukaryote, has become, reverted back in time from being an advanced cell to being a primitive cell. It's almost as if the cell says, I am so sick and tired of being under duress that I am not going to be a liver. I'm not going to be a skin. I'm not going to be a bone. I'm just going to go ahead and do my own thing. It's the duress, the stressors that account for a cell going from eukaryotic and functional to prokaryotic and malignant, or at least cancerous. So we want to get this idea out of our heads that cancer is a thing that happens to us, number one, and also that it is an organ phenomena. It's not an organ phenomena, it's a cell phenomena. And when you understand it's a cell phenomenon, you can see, and it's the end result of a cell that's under duress, you can see why it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to overwhelm the cell with more duress. This is why chemotherapy doesn't work very effectively, because the cell's already under duress, and now we're putting more duress in the cell, trying to kill the cell. You end up with a very stressed out system with chemotherapy. So first and foremost, cancer doesn't just happen to us. It's something about the environment of the body. I'll tell you what that is in a moment. And secondly, it's a cellular phenomena. The cell can't deal with the environment as a eukaryote, which requires a lot of advanced environmental factors. So it reverse back in time to becoming a primitive cell, which just divides out of control. I think of a cancer cell as a sociopathic cell. Some people say a psychopathic cell. It doesn't care about anybody else. It just cares about itself because it's been abused, basically. So what is that abuse that turns a eukaryote into a prokaryote, an advanced cell into a primitive cell, a healthy cell, functional cell into a cancer cell, into a disease cell? Well, it's the same basic cellular stresses that account for all diseases. And in this way, cancer is not different from other degenerative diseases. So there's only three things that can go wrong with a cell. A cell is perfectly equipped to live as long as it has food and oxygen and a clean place to do its work. If a cell is starved, if it's suffocated, if it's toxic for long enough, that cell will die. That's a good thing. In fact, the cells commit suicide. There's a suicide program in the cell. That suicide program triggers a condition or a phenomenon called apoptosis. Apoptosis is cell suicide, and that's a good thing. Cells will die when they're starved or suffocated and toxic, so they don't reproduce. However, every once in a while, a cell will sneak through the apoptotic process. It won't die. Instead of dying, it will revert back in time to becoming a prokaryote, where it can be functional by just dividing. Now, most of the time, I want to be very clear here, most of the time when a cell is abused, toxified or suffocated or robbed of nutrition, it is going to die. But once in a while, it will not die. It will sneak through. And when it sneaks through the apoptotic process, it can divide. And this is where cancer comes from. And by the way, cancers are always appearing in the body, but usually the body can eliminate them. Every once in a while, the body doesn't. So you can see the odds of cancer forming are low in the sense that there's all these protective mechanisms to prevent it from growing, prevent the cancer cell from dividing and becoming a tumor. But every once in a while, it sneaks through. The main point is it's the end result of stressors, whether those stressors are lack of nutrition or whether those stressors are lack of oxygen or whether those stressors are toxicity. So how do you deal with it? Well, the first thing to recognize is that cancer is just like any other degenerative disease, is a function of the triangle of disease. The triangle of disease are those 3 points of breakdown that lead to health challenges, diseases. Those 3 points, the triangle of disease, are the digestive system, the blood sugar system, and the adrenal thyroid complex. You cannot deal with heart disease or neurological diseases, or dementias, or autoimmune diseases, or skin disease, or anything. There's 44,000 different diagnoses. You can't deal with any of them unless you address the triangle first. We said that. We've been talking about that for weeks now. So it should come as no surprise that the triangle of disease also relates to cancer. For example, the digestive system. We know that the digestive system is, when we talk about the digestive system, we often focus on the intestine, and that is really where the crux of digestion takes place. Of course, you chew your food, goes into the stomach. The stomach plays a role in acidification, enzymatic breakdown, the gallbladder and the liver involved in bile secretion, but the bulk of the digestive process occurs in the small intestine. So there's going to be a relationship between this, based on our triangle of disease philosophy, there's going to be a relationship between the small intestine and cancer, specifically between dysbiosis, messed up gut bacteria in cancer, just like that's the foundation of all diseases. See where we're going here? We want to think of cancer like we think of all diseases. So first, you got to recognize that there's a relationship between gut dysbiosis and cancer on all cancers. This relates to what's called leaky gut. When you have lots of bacteria in the small intestine, remember, bacteria are supposed to live largely in the large intestine, for the most part in the large intestine, not the small intestine. When you have overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, you have a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This can cause an inflammation of the intestinal lining. There are other things that can cause inflammation of the intestinal lining, including secretions from the bacteria in the small intestine, as well as specific foods, gluten, lectins, plant defensive molecules, and fried fats can be inflammatory for the intestinal lining. Estrogen has an inflammatory effect on the intestinal lining. Long story short, the intestinal cells of the intestinal lining expand and leaks can form into the blood, and toxicity can enter into the blood. So dysbiosis leads to leaky gut. Some of these things like histamine accelerate tumorigenesis. There's a molecule called lipopolysaccharides, which are actually LPS, as they call them, which are actually particles, bacterial particles from the bacterial membrane, the cell wall, I should say, of certain bacteria contain these lipopolysaccharides. These lipopolysaccharides are very, very inflammatory. In fact, they're associated with all health challenges. No surprise there. Just like histamine is associated with all health challenges, just like leaky gut and dysbiosis is associated with all health challenges. Likewise with cancer. So there's a major relationship between digestive health, dysbiosis, and cancer, whether it has to do with leaky gut or whether it has to do with changes in gut bacteria, dysbiosis, or whether it has to do with problems with bile and problems with stomach acid. Bile has antibacterial properties. So if you don't have a gallbladder or if your bile is sticky and sludgy, that can lead to proliferation of bacteria in the small intestine and cause leaky gut. Or if you aren't making enough stomach acid, that can also lead to proliferation of gut bacteria, leading to leaky gut. So it's the whole digestive system that you want to focus on. And we'll talk about some strategies here in a second. Number two, the second point on the triangle disease, the blood sugar system. And that involves insulin as well as the blood sugar system. Elevated blood sugar is problematic. Elevated blood sugar is very inflammatory. Hyperinsulinemia, Liam, the next slide. Hyperinsulinemia is also related to cancer. Insulin, like histamine, speeds things up, revs things up. And cancer is obviously a condition where things are revved up. So working on blood sugar is critical, just like working on digestive health is critical. We'll talk about a couple strategies for doing that as well. The third point on the triangle disease, the adrenal glands. Cortisol suppresses the immune system. Let's get the other slide up, the first slide, the cortisol or the adrenal slide, Liam. Yes, interplay between stress and cancer. Stress suppresses the immune system. One of the jobs of the immune system is to be a surveillance system for spotting cancer, so it can attack the cancer. Under conditions of long-term duress, our immune system becomes suppressed and it becomes more likely that a cancer cell will escape surveillance. And of course, when cortisol is elevated chronically, eventually the thyroid will slow down and hyperthyroidism follows hypercortisolism. Additionally, dysfunctions at the level of the intestine can also be related to hypothyroidism. Also, hyperinsulinemia Elevated blood sugar and elevated insulin can also lead to hypothyroidism. You can see this whole thing is all connected. Hypothyroidism suppresses everything and will make you more likely to have cancer. It suppresses the immune system. It shuts down the digestive system. It throws off the blood sugar system, and it throws off the adrenal glands. And it works the other way around. The adrenal glands affect the thyroid, and the blood sugar affects the thyroid, and the digestive system affects the thyroid. It's kind of a big circle. I call it a triangle, but it's like a spinning triangle, because the digestive system breaks down, then the blood sugar system breaks down, then the adrenal thyroid system breaks down, and the thyroid affects the digestive system, and then the whole thing starts again. Which is to say is, if you want to address cancer, what you want to do is you want to do the same thing that you will have to do, that you need to do when you want to address any chronic health challenge. Now, if you have a tumor, you got to get rid of it, because that can interfere from a structural perspective with body function or biochemistry or metabolism. So I'm not saying not to get rid of a tumor if you have a tumor, but simultaneously with your surgical procedure, or if you decide on chemotherapy, which doesn't work most of the time, whatever it is, simultaneously, you want to work on the triangle, because you see, the cancer cell becomes cancerous because of the environment that it's in. And while it's true that cancer is a cellular phenomena, that cellular behavior, that cellular phenomena, is connected to the tissue that's the cell is sitting in. There's no real distinction, aside from semantically and maybe philosophically, in terms of our discussion, to illustrate how these things relate to each other. Aside from that, there's no real distinction between the environment and the cell. The cell is embedded in the environment, just like we're embedded in our environment. Even though it appears that we're separate from our environment, in reality, we're embedded in reality, just like a cell is embedded in the environment. So changing the environment that the cell is situated in is critical. Number one, for preventing cancer. Number two, for slowing down cancer's progression. Number three, for number four, for maybe even reversing cancer on its own. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that if you just change the triangle of disease or address the triangle of disease, your cancer is going to go away. But it's definitely something you want to do at the very least to improve the prognosis of your Western medical procedures, or to slow down its progression. So first and foremost, if you understand it's a digestive condition first, dysbiosis, leaky gut, achlorhydria, or reduced stomach acid, or problems with bile, whatever it is, stop eating. Okay, I'm just kidding. You don't want to stop eating, but you want to practice calorie restriction. Calorie restriction with optimum nutrition. Sometimes folks will say, oh, my doctor told me I got to have a lot of calories. I'm losing weight. No, you don't want a lot of calories. Calories represent work. You never want a lot of calories. Calories represent work for the body. And when you have a disease like cancer, you need all your resources directed towards the cancer, not towards digesting your food. So you don't need a lot of calories. You need nutrition, however. And that's where the Cron diet comes in. Calorie restriction with optimum nutrition. Interestingly, a cell which operates in a healthy body harmoniously and calmly, a cell, its default mode is to grow. It takes nutrition to put the brakes on growth. Just lost my light there. I hope that didn't make too much of a difference in our lighting. Anyway, I just lost my light.
Still looks good. You still look good.
All right. So it takes nutrition to put the brakes on growth. Under conditions of nutritional deficiencies, cells will have a tendency to grow chaotically. We see this on the skin in psoriasis and in acne. We see it in terms of boils and cysts in the body under conditions of nutritional deficiency. So making sure you're well nutriated. Vitamin A, by the way, is a major growth controlling vitamin, as is vitamin D, and vitamin A and D work together. So vitamins A and D are important. Vitamin C is phenomenally important. By the way, sometimes physicians will say, or oncologists will say, don't use vitamin C if you're on chemotherapy. Vitamin C will make chemotherapy work better. So vitamin C can be very valuable. There's a molecule that the body makes called glutathione, which can be very valuable. Now, glutathione is made in the liver, but you can supplement with the building blocks of glutathione. You can't supplement with glutathione because Stomach acid will break it down, but you can supplement with the precursors or the building blocks, which include the amino acid glutamine, the amino acid glycine, and the amino acid cysteine. I love a supplement called N-acetylcysteine, by the way, for general detox because it helps build glutathione. You can also have glutathione injected directly into the blood. You can have something called a Myers cocktail injected directly into the blood, which has the B vitamins and has magnesium, selenium injected into the blood. And I would personally be doing IV nutrition if I, God forbid, got diagnosed with cancer. IV nutrition is great, but you can also take nutrition orally. There's some nutrients that have anti-cancer properties, like fucoidan. There's a lot of wonderful literature on fucoidan. Longevity's got a great fucoidan product called Fucoid Z, which I absolutely love. Beta glucan is another molecule that has a lot of literature associated with helping fight cancer. And Longevity also has a great beta glucan product called Restart Your Life. So nutrition is very important. Also, avoiding things that put stresses on the intestine or that can throw off gut bacteria, such as the FODMAPs foods. The FODMAPs foods are foods that feed bacteria in the small intestine. FODMAPs is a fancy acronym that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. It's kind of a mouthful. Just think of fermentable sugars, especially the ones that end OL: xylitol, sorbitol, mannitol. These can all be problematic for some folks. These FODMAPs foods are found in mushy fruits and vegetables like okra and squash, and bananas and dried fruits are high in FODMAPs. You can go online and look up FODMAPs foods. You want to avoid those if you want good intestinal health for any health challenge, but including cancer. And then, of course, anything processed, ultra processed foods. It should be a no-brainer. We should, the article came out, but it shouldn't have surprised anybody that ultra processed foods are associated with cancer, or that energy drinks can be associated with cancer, or anything stressful on the body that provides calories without nutrition. This is what these ultra processed foods do. They give you a lot of calories, but they don't give you the nutrients, the micronutrients, or the enzymes to help the body use those calories. Secondly, keep your blood sugar down, keep your insulin stable. Obviously, that means avoiding sugary foods, sweet foods, desserts, but also grains and pastas and rices and fruit juices. Surprisingly, fruits and fruit juices are very problematic. Even though there are some nutrients in fruits, there's very little nutritional value in a fruit juice, however, especially if it's the kind you get in a supermarket. If you make it fresh, there's probably some nutrition there, but you lose the fiber. If you lose the fiber, you're going to get a big hit of sugar. That's going to spike your insulin. Insulin spikes eventually will lead to chronic insulin spikes will eventually lead to insulin resistance. That means more insulin, type 2 diabetes, obesity, a whole metabolic mess. In fact, it's called metabolic syndrome. All the symptoms associated with dysglycemia, messed up blood sugar, and hyperinsulinemia, too much insulin. So ketogenic diet, low calorie, staying off of foods that spike your blood sugar, especially the liquids like fruit juices and soda pops. It should be very easy to deal with blood sugar, because when we're eating too much sugar, it's not because our body needs the sugar. It's because our brain needs the sugar. We think we want sugar. We get very satisfied, and there are neurochemicals of pleasure that are associated with the ingestion of sugar and refined carbohydrates. And there are companies, food companies, that profit off of that, and they want us doing this. So keeping your intake of these kinds of foods down and using nutrients that help the body process sugar. Longevity sweeties, the B vitamins in general, but especially vitamin B3, niacin, and vitamin B1, thiamine. Selenium supports insulin. Alpha lipoic acid supports insulin. Sulfur supports insulin. MSM sulfur supports insulin. Making sure you're getting fiber with your sugar, or with your sugary meals, or starchy meals, bready meals, pastas and rices. Make sure you're using some kind of vegetable with these kinds of foods that will get you fiber, or you can make your own. I make a fiber beverage. You can make your own fiber beverage with flax seeds. Just grind the flax seeds, put them in water. Drink it down before your meal or after your meal. Before your meal, you'll eat less food. In fact, you can do a flaxseed beverage with flax seeds and cinnamon and clove and cardamom or nutmeg with some water, maybe a little coconut water in there. It is so delicious. It is so filling. You get lots of protein. You get lots of nutrients, including vitamin E and essential fatty acids. And on top of all that, it fills you up and it mops up that excess sugar so it doesn't go into your blood and spike your insulin. And then calm down, relax. keep that cortisol down. Now, by hitting the first 2 points in the triangle of disease, the cortisol will naturally go down. But you can use nutrients. Vitamin A and vitamin E can help with cortisol, elevated cortisol, hypercortisolemia, as they say. Emia means blood, hyper means a lot, hypercortisolemia. Vitamins A, E, there's a wonderful hormone. It is a hormone, but it's not a really powerful hormone called pregnenolone, pregnenolone, pregnenolone. You can get it on Amazon. That has a calming effect, supports the adrenal health, and also keeps cortisol down. Vitamin C is very important for the adrenal glands. Zinc is very important for the adrenal glands. Vitamin B12 is very important for the adrenal glands. Use adrenal support. When we talk about cortisol, using adrenal support strategies can help you with your cortisol. And of course, the first 2 points in the triangle of disease will help there too. Then the thyroid. Now, you're not going to be able to address the thyroid by itself, but by working on the first 3 points, the digestive system, the blood sugar system, and cortisol, even just the digestive system and the blood sugar system, everything will calm down. Cellular health will be supported as long as you're nutriating appropriately, oxygenating appropriately, and this is very important. In fact, Dr. Otto Warburg showed back in the 1930s, I believe, that lack of oxygen will make a cell turn cancerous. So in a way, a cancer cell is really a cell that hasn't been oxygenated. This is why oxygen can be helpful for dealing with cancer in terms of hyperbaric oxygen chambers, where they actually drive oxygen into your body under high pressure. Hyperbaric means high pressure. So Otto Warburg showed that a cancer cell is a suffocated cell. If you take a cell and you rob it of oxygen, it's going to turn into a cancer cell. So oxygenation is very important. Inflammation, of course, will block oxygenation, and that's why this triangle disease is so important, because it's an anti-inflammatory strategy. Working on the digestive system and the blood sugar system, and working with the adrenal glands has an anti-inflammatory benefit. So these are all great strategies you can use. Number 1, to prevent cancer. Number 2, to slow down the progression of cancer if you've been, God forbid, diagnosed with cancer. Number 3, to improve the prognosis of your Western medical strategies. If you decide to get chemotherapy or surgery, using the triangle of disease will prevent cancer recurrence, and will help your medical strategies work more effectively. Treat it like any other health challenge. Work on the triangle of disease. Restrict your calories. Make sure you're nutriating. Making sure you're hydrated. Dehydration is another risk factor for carcinogenesis. You remember, it's a tissue that's the tissue is the determining factor in the health of the cell. And by the way, cancer always looks for weaknesses in the tissue around it to metastasize. And one of the ways it determines weakness is by the stiffness of the tissue. Tissue that's has just the right amount of stiffness, not too much stiffness, not too little stiffness, but just the right amount of stiffness. Stiffness for a cancer cell is the kind of tissue that a cancer cell will metastasize into. And cancer cells actually have little roto-rooter enzymes that will drill into the connective tissue and various tissues that the cells surrounded in order to metastasize. So using these health strategies, these generic health strategies, that's really important. Cancer needs to be regarded as a generic, systemic health issue. It's not a local issue that affects the prostate and the breast and the intestine, all these little areas that we're working on. It's a systemic health challenge that affects the entire bodily environment, thereby affecting the cells. So it should come as no surprise that working on generic health strategies is the approach that you want to take for preventing cancer, for improving its prognosis if you're going with Western medicine, or reducing the impact or the severity of your cancer diagnosis or of the carcinogenesis.
That was outstanding, Ben. That was because the strategy is you have breast cancer, liver cancer, whatever, they go after the organ.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is totally different. It's a systemic thing. And
systemic condition, yes. It requires an entire polluted system. And most importantly, it's a sign of duress, a sign of cellular stress. This idea that we just got cancer, it's a genetic disease.
Right.
My mother had cancer, so I'm going to have cancer. We want to get that out of our heads. That is anachronistic. That's old school medicine. And the fact of the matter is that we've had a war on cancer since 1971, right?
Right.
Right. And where's cancer at? Cancer rates they're not going down, they're going up. Death by cancer is going down a little bit because we figured out how to keep people alive longer, but cancer rates have gone up. According to, this is according to usafacts.org. Where is this here? Where is this here? You know, over 40% of Americans are going to be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their lives. Where did I read this? Here? Hang on, let me see what I saw. I don't remember. Oh, here it is. An estimated 18.1 million cancer survivors in the United States. Now, here it is. Between 2000 and 2019, annual cancer cases increased by 36.5%. The number of new cases went from 1.3 million to 1.8 million. And like I say, deaths from cancer are going down a little bit because we're figuring out how to keep people alive longer, but cancer rates have not gone down. So our war on cancer is a failure, and you can't have a war on a disease because the disease itself is a war that's going on in the body. You want to be kind and gentle to the body, and you want to allow the body to use its resources for fighting cancer, not for digesting your food or clearing out toxins from the body. You want all the nutritional resources to be dedicated towards dealing with the cancer. And I should say this also: visualization is a very interesting health strategy. I don't know if you ever heard of visualization techniques for health, right?
I have.
Performance athletes like basketball players and baseball players and football players and Olympic athletes, they visualize before they go into the arena. They visualize what a win will be like. They visualize what a good performance will be like. They visualize
Wayne Gretzky said he would visualize the puck going into the net before.
Yes. If anybody has cancer, what they want to do is they want to go to a histology site, a tissue structure site, or a cell biology site where they can see a cell, maybe even see cancer cells, or maybe even get a YouTube video or see a video of cancer cells, and then memorize that and visualize the cancer cells and visualize your immune cells attacking the cancer cells and visualize cancer cells shrinking. Don't underestimate the importance of the power of using these kind of supposedly woo-woo mental and sort of psychic strategies. And of course, we talk about cortisol, and that's where your emotions come in. And that's also very important. Love, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, empathy, all the good stuff has immune boosting effects, while anger and depression and jealousy and rage and fear, guess what?
Cortisol.
Have immune suppressing effect.
Yeah.
So if you have cancer, you want to leverage all the modalities, whether they're spiritual, and there are spiritual modalities that you can utilize, including prayer, mental, emotional, visualization, and utilizing positive emotions, as well as physical, nutrition, movement, rest, and oxygenation. As we said, a cancer cell is a suffocated cell.
And the other thing that I just want to mention that I thought was so powerful is that you're saying the cell gets so stressed out through all of these factors that it devolves. It almost from a eukaryote from
a eukaryote to a prokaryote.
Yeah.
It devolves. That's exactly. I'm going to use that. That's exactly what that is.
So it's almost like the opposite of a stem cell. Like it goes to its most primitive thing where it's in a protective mode, and it doesn't want to.
There's a lot of connection between a stem cell and a cancer cell. Cancer cell doesn't, is a mortal cell. A stem cell is an immortal cell. So there are some biologists who believe there is an important connection there. And both stem cells and cancer cells become what they become based on signals from the environment. The niche, as they say in biology, the niche that the stem cell is sitting in is going to determine what that stem cell does. And the niche that the cancer cell is sitting in is going to determine what the cancer cell is going to do. So there's some very interesting connections between stem cells and stem cells and cancer cells. Remind me next week to tell you about what I call the wisdom of a stem cell.
The wisdom of a stem cell.
We can talk about that next week.
As opposed to the trauma of the cancer cell. Yeah, all right, Ben.
Thank you so much.
Outstanding. Everybody put your questions and comments in whatever platform you're viewing us on. Keep us in your stream next Sunday. Every Sunday, we're having these illuminating podcasts. And health is easy as Ben says. Health is easy as 1, 2, 3. The triangle of of health. So
Triangle of disease.
triangle of disease, and
There's the square of health.
the square of health and the
The square
triangle
of
of
health.
disease.
Yeah, the square of health. Nutriate, oxygenate, or nutriate, respirate, move, and rest.
Yes. All right.
All right.
So
Thank you, Liam. Have a
thank
great
you,
week,
Ben.
buddy.
We'll see everybody next week, and have a great rest of your Sunday. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot.